Citizen Kane is the most important, greatest American film as far as I'm concerned.
This is the gold standard here.
It's pretty hard to top Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane is the greatest movie ever made.
Citizen Kane, and it's this huge movie.
Orson Welles was brilliant. I mean, and that was like his first film, and he was 26 years old.
It is just one of the great movies ever made.
I made no campaign promises.
In the office, they said, there's a man called Toland waiting to see you. He said, I want to make your picture. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Why? I don't know anything about movies. And he says, that's why I want to do it.
26 years old, and you made Citizen Kane, and they said, you can't do these things. You can't have the background in focus, or whatever it was, or you can't shoot a scene that way. And you knew that you could, and how did you know this? When every list of great films, of course, many of them lead with Citizen Kane and say it's the finest film made. Do you agree?
No, certainly not. My next one is, though. That's...
Orson, is it true that when Citizen Kane was being made, that people actually tried to stop it being made? And
there was indeed a very definite effort to stop the film during shooting by those elements in the studio who were attempting to seize power. And there was a big effort to overthrow the then head of the studio, who was taken to be out of his mind because he'd given me this contract, which made the making of these films possible. And stopping me or proving my incompetence would have won their case. So it wasn't malice toward me, it was a cold-blooded political maneuver.
The decent, ordinary citizens know that I'll do everything in my power to protect the underprivileged, the underpaid, and the underfed.
Orson Welles was many things: temperamental, outspoken, autocratic, all of the above. But he was also positive in everything he did, and throughout the making of Citizen Kane, his every thought was, how can I make this picture different from, better than, other pictures?
I've always wanted to know the answer to this. You always hear that when you were 26 years old and you made Citizen Kane, and they said, you can't do these things. You can't have the background in focus, or whatever it was, or you can't shoot a scene that way, Mr. Wells, or young Mr. Wells, or Orson, or whatever they called you then. And you knew that you could, and how did you know this?
Because I didn't know any better, and it's very much in the line with what Jack was saying earlier in the show. It comes from just, you know, sheer dumbness. You're sure it's got to be you're good and you're great. It's ignorance. There's no authority in the world like it.
But the area which perhaps concerned him most was the one where he would need the most help, the photography. Wells got his answer before he'd even posed the question.
One day in the office, they said, there's a man called Toland waiting to see you. And he was, of course, the leading cameraman. And he said, I want to make your picture. And I said, well, that's wonderful. Why?
Because you've never made a picture. And you don't know what cannot be done.
We're going to have a movie that looks different. I'm tired of working with people who know too much about it.
But there's got to be something more than that technically. I mean, how did you know that...
You know technically that the whole bag of movies can be learned in about a day and a half.
Get a guy who knows how to...
And ask him, and that's the end of it. And I have the right to say it because I had in my first picture in Kane the greatest cameraman who ever lived, who was Greg Toland. The only thing was I'd been directing in the theater for years, and nowadays they have lighting people. And I thought a director did that in a movie. So for the first 10 days, I was moving the lights around, you see?
Yes. I'll sign those papers now, Mr. Thatcher.
You people seem to forget that I'm the boy's father.
Louis B. Mayer and several other movie moguls were about to buy the film and burn it before it was released. It was only sheer luck that didn't happen.
It's a style, and a certain kind of filmmaker who really wants to make the film entirely on his own. And that sort of fellow is the sworn enemy of the system. They rightly regard the artist as the enemy of their profession. So
the system
and the system is at great pains to denigrate such a person.
There is a myth in the film community, for example, that Orson is an unreliable director, that he is profligate.
I've never gone over schedule or over budget. fact, we were under budget on Kane and under schedule, but we did that by a trick because I said, I don't know anything about movies, so for about 10 days, I'm just going to shoot tests. And what we did was shoot Kane. We shot 10 days of Kane before we admitted we were actually shooting. But we would have been under schedule.
Citizen Kane, flat out, the most important, greatest American film as far as I'm concerned. First of all, it's a quarry for filmmakers in that it contains the very best of cinematography, editing, lighting, performance, screenwriting. The story itself is somewhat complex, but it's simple. It's based on the old biblical idea, what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world if he loses his own soul?
Anybody else that'd say what's going to happen to you would be a lesson to you. Only you're going to need more than one lesson.
I'm talking about the courage of the filmmaker, the courage, the audacity. It's about courage and audacity, and I'm making this my way.
There's never been a film that I'm aware of that if you watch it for the 138th time, you can still see something new that you hadn't noticed before.
I made no campaign promises.
When I really discovered what a director does, and that is, I saw Citizen Kane on television for the first time. And I began to become aware of editing and camera positions.
Not just every scene, but every shot has an idea. There's a concept and an idea being executed at every second of that film.
There's this extraordinary performance which people seem to take for granted. I mean, Orson ages from 25 to 85.
And this is what I think Welles brought to cinema, to American cinema particularly, because up to that time, it was the seamless film, in a way. The hidden camera, the camera that you couldn't tell was there. So Welles was the one to really open up the Pandora's box of cameras flying up in the air.
Rosebud. If you could have found out what that rosebud meant, I bet that would have explained everything.